Hello everyone, welcome back to the Movie Reviewers 100. My name is Scott, also known as Cineram. I do the Thursday videos here on the YouTube collaboration channel and of course the Movie Reviewers 100 Facebook page. In case you're wondering, that page is the best place to interact with us, leave comments, offer some suggestions for future themes. That would be much appreciated. The link, of course, is below if you're watching the video on YouTube right now. Our theme this week is the recently deceased Peter O'Toole, an actor whose career spanned many decades, was nominated for Best Actor just a couple of years ago for something, and I hadn't seen that movie, unfortunately. I'd seen a few of his movies in the past, but not a great deal. I was hoping to check out a classic film that he did called The Lion in Winter with Katharine Hepburn, but unfortunately, since the weather here in Chicago has been so incredibly miserable, cold, and constant snowing, it really wasn't a good time for me to go all the way out to the remote video stores that I visit, the few that are left in the city, to rent it. So I ended up getting an on-demand movie called Creator, which came out in 1985, which I'd seen some commercials for and had been curious about in the past. This movie was directed by Ivan Passer, who most of his filmography I'm not really familiar with, but he did direct a movie a few years before Creator with Jeff Bridges called Cutter's Way. Don't really know a lot about that. What did I know about Creator? I knew that it was kind of a raunchy comedy about a scientist, basically. Peter O'Toole is a scientist working at this research facility, this medical research facility. He has his own lab, he has his own staff, and he's in sort of conflict with the Ogden Stiers character, who is also a scientist heading his own research team. They have fights over funding, they have fights over the kind of resources that are allocated to them as far as personnel and what have you. And Ogden Stiers is really intent on finding some reason to get Peter O'Toole booted out of the university medical center where they both work and off to some remote area where it's mostly just elderly scientists and doctors who really don't have any funding, so they just kind of sit around all day long. And Peter O'Toole definitely doesn't want to go there, primarily because he wants to use as many of the resources that he can get his hands on to reanimate his wife. His wife died 30 years earlier, and he wants to put her DNA into an embryo and grow a new version of her in his home lab, basically. So at the start of the movie, Vincent Spano's kind of the main character here. He plays a young graduate student named Boris, who joins Peter O'Toole's team, and Peter O'Toole lets him in on a secret little project right here that they can't really share with other people because it's crazy and probably illegal, what have you, but he's going to help him anyway just because he likes him. A couple other characters in the movie are played by Virginia Madsen. She's a young student there, very, very pretty, of course. Virginia Madsen in the 80s. Ooh, she was so beautiful. Still beautiful now, but, you know, back then, Anyway, so the whole thing starts basically with Boris following her into Peter O'Toole's lab, and Peter O'Toole says, I tell you what, you come work for me and I'll tell you who she is. But you have to come work for me instead of the other guy, Ogden Stiers. So he's like, sure, I'll do it, anything, I just gotta know who she is. So eventually he does get in touch with her, and he has this sort of semi-platonic relationship with her. He tries, she says she just wants him to be a friend, and so he tries to be a friend at first, but of course all the time he's hoping that she'll feel differently about him in the future. Meanwhile, what Peter O'Toole needs is an embryo, an egg from a young fertile woman that he can take the DNA out of and put in his wife's DNA and grow his wife all over again. And he gets this opportunity when he meets Mariel Hemingway, who is a 19-year-old who just basically broke up with her boyfriend, really doesn't have any money, any place to stay, and he just basically sees her. He's in a cafe basically in town, and she's sitting there crying, and he walks up to her and asks her what's wrong, and she gives him her sob story, and then he invites her to come live at his house, and if she wouldn't mind, you know, he'll provide room and board for her and everything like that, as long as she'll give up a couple of her eggs for him to experiment with. So she's like, yeah, sure, I'd love to. So that is basically the dynamic of the movie. There's, you know, there's some hijinks basically, you know, and yeah, it's not a movie that I really could take all that seriously. Most of the time, especially the Peter O'Toole and Mariel Hemingway characters, often spoke in ways that really seemed overwritten, and not in sort of like a clever way, but just like, it didn't seem like they were really communicating to each other, more like they were just saying really interesting things to the audience, more like, rather than to each other. So I didn't really quite buy it. Plus, it's just like he eventually sort of has feelings for her, and he wants to marry her, or she wants to marry him, something like that. She's just like, oh, I'd be a good wife to you, everything like that. I'm like, she's 19 years old. He's in his 50s, you know? I mean, it's crazy, really. It really is kind of crazy. It's an okay movie. Not great. Vincent Spano, never really been a big fan of him, and there's plenty of scenes in this movie where he's kind of terrible. Peter O'Toole, you know, I mean, he's a class act. You know, he's very eloquent. He delivers his lines really, really well. But the whole situation's pretty ludicrous, and so can't really recommend the movie. Amusing at times. You know, it's a comedy. It is amusing at times. But yeah, not really a recommendation for me. I'm glad I finally saw it though, because I've been sort of like, every once in a while I think, I remember that movie Creator, you know, kind of a, you know, sexy comedy with Peter O'Toole and Mariel Hemingway. I'd even forgotten that Virginia Madsen was in it. When I saw her name in the credits, I'm like, oh good, you know, and she's looking very, 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 very good in this movie. Yeah. Anyway, so not a strong recommendation, not really, yeah, exactly, not really a recommendation, but I am glad I finally got a chance to see it. We've got a new theme starting tomorrow. That would be, of course, the one and only Jake Gyllenhaal. A week of videos on the films of Jake Gyllenhaal. We'll hope you tune in for that. Thank you so much, very much, for all you people who have come over to our Facebook page and liked it and checked out our videos. Please comment, and again, please suggest other themes. That would be awesome. We've got like a whole year's worth of themes, so that any suggestions we'll try and give priority to. That would be good. Hopefully we won't have too many more people in the movie business die anytime soon. We won't have to keep doing these tribute weeks, because everybody else keeps getting pushed back. You know, I mean, they deserve it. You know, they deserve it. But still, it's like, you know, please stop dying. That would be nice. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. See you again next time. Bye.